There are lost records that challenge the narratives about human origins as we know them. Ancient texts, deliberately suppressed and labeled as heretical, suggest that human creation is not limited to the simple act of molding the physical body. Works such as the Gospel of Philip and the Book of Enoch reveal fragments of a much more complex story, where humanity is divided into three distinct types of beings, each with unique spiritual characteristics. These manuscripts speak of beings of light, earthly humans, and beings born of fire, figures that surpass conventional definitions of humanity. These texts were, over the centuries, censored, destroyed, or hidden, leaving only fragments so that few had access to their content. But why hide such knowledge? What is the reason for keeping humanity oblivious to these truths? Perhaps the answer lies in the impact that this wisdom would have on our perception of ourselves, and mainly on the power structures that depend on blind obedience. If these writings offer a vision of our nature that defies everything we have been taught, how far-reaching would this revelation be? The so-called beings of light occupy a special position in the narrative of the banned texts. These ancient writings describe us as entities of a spiritual nature, with an essence of pure luminosity. Unlike the human figures we know, these beings do not have physical bodies and therefore are free from the limitations of matter. Their existence is characterized by the freedom of not needing to eat, sleep, or feel pain, all aspects that to us seem inescapable. Instead, these beings inhabit a plane of pure consciousness, emanating directly from the divine as extensions of God's own essence. The most intriguing thing is that, according to these texts, these beings of light did not need temples, priests, or rituals to connect to the divine. His connection with God was direct and unshakable, without the need for intermediaries. This fact poses a direct threat to any system that seeks to control spirituality, as it suggests that contact with the sacred does not need to be mediated by an institution. These beings existed in a condition of total spiritual autonomy, a state of continuous and pure communion where their very existence was a form of worship. In scriptures such as the Gospel of Philip, these beings are described as emanating from the divine source, carrying within themselves an innate wisdom, an absolute knowledge that transcends common learning. They didn't need to seek the truth. They were already the truth, a reflection of divine light in its purest form. To imagine them is to imagine a humanity that never needed commandments or external guidance, as its own essence already reflected the plenitude of the sacred. It's understandable, then, why these texts were banned and their teachings repressed. The idea that human beings could have a lineage of light, a spiritual ancestor independent of any formal doctrine, would completely destabilize the role of religious authorities. After all, what would happen if people believed that they had within themselves a trace of this primordial light? Who could access the divine without the intermediation of imposed rituals? The implication is clear. A being with a direct connection to the sacred does not need external rules or figures to serve as guides for their faith. The existence of beings of light suggests that originally humanity had a forgotten divine potential, a spiritual state that could be recovered. However, over the centuries, this potential was silenced as a dangerous truth that could not be left within everyone's reach. These beings represent an ancient memory of something that, when rediscovered, could shake the foundations of a control system that is sustained by the distance between the human and the divine. If you have ever wondered about what has been hidden from us, about greater knowledge that seems beyond our reach, perhaps there is an answer. What if I told you that the answers to these questions are within your reach now? In the forbidden name of Jesus, many secrets kept for generations are revealed, offering a different perspective than traditional spirituality presents. For those who feel that there is a greater connection to be rescued, this ebook could be the next step on their journey. Check out the first pinned comment where you can access it and find out for yourself. Unlike beings of light, described as spiritual and divine entities, earthly or terrestrial humans appear in ancient texts as a creation based on matter. According to these scriptures, they were shaped by the Demiurge, a figure who appears in Gnostic traditions as the architect of the material world. Far from being a benevolent deity, the Demiurge is described as a minor creator, driven by interests of control and power. He would have modeled the physical human being with the clear purpose of limiting his nature, imprisoning the divine soul in a fragile and perishable body. To keep this creation under control, the Demiurge designed earthly humans so that they remained constantly tied to basic needs, such as sustenance, sleep, and physical protection. This conception of humanity, with deeply rooted desires and fears, serves a purpose: to keep human beings focused on the material, away from spiritual questions or searches for inner truth. Fear, desire, and insecurity would be tools carefully planted to prevent the awakening of consciousness and the search for deeper wisdom, called gnosis by the Gnostics. Gnosis, or true knowledge, would be the key to liberation, allowing humanity to reconnect with its divine essence. But earthly humans were made to be obedient, dependent on external structures that promise security and guidance. Thus, these individuals became susceptible to following imposed leaders, doctrines, and rituals without questioning the purpose or authenticity of these directions. This type of human being, disconnected from true gnosis, is portrayed as easily manipulated, constantly seeking answers and direction outside of themselves. Texts such as those in the Gnostic corpus describe this creation as a kind of functional prototype, a life form designed not to live freely, but to operate within a rigid system. It is a humanity that was born to work, to be governed, and to remain submissive to the whims of a creator who desired absolute power. Earthly humans are, in this view, prisoners of a constant cycle of survival and submission, a cog in a larger scheme of control. This construction of the material human, imprisoned by flesh and time, suggests that earthly life is a kind of test, a scenario where the soul was imprisoned to conform. By keeping humanity far from true knowledge and its own inner power, the Demiurge and its forces ensure that this being never remembers its spiritual origin. Through forgetting who they really are, earthly humans become pieces in a cosmic game, hostages to a structure that, from the beginning, was made to keep their light hidden and their essence subjugated. Fire-born humans represent a special and unsettling category within ancient scriptures. In contrast to beings of light, who transcend matter, and earthly humans shaped for obedience, those born of fire are described as intense beings, driven by an internal energy that is both creative and destructive. This lineage carries a spirit of transformation and rebellion, as if they are constantly on the verge of breaking away from any system that tries to contain them. They are those who challenge, those who question, those who never settle into established structures. In forbidden texts and occult traditions, these individuals are described as bearing a divine fire, a force that is not content to follow the status quo. They are the visionaries, the innovators, those who cannot avoid the need to challenge conventions. While earthly humans seek stability and security, those born of fire live in search of change, driven by a restlessness that differentiates them from others. This fiery essence is not just a characteristic, but an internal calling that directs them to break down barriers and open new paths, even in the face of strong opposition. This energy also makes them a real threat to control systems, as they are naturally averse to submission. Where others accept rules and hierarchies, those born of fire see limitations to be overcome. Historically, these figures appear as revolutionaries, agents of transformation who challenge power structures and question established narratives. Some texts even suggest that these humans carry a spark that connects them to a greater purpose, something that is beyond the material world and can never be truly tamed. The revelation we have been searching for, what these ancient texts hide from us, can finally be accessed. The forbidden name of Jesus is available, but units are running out. Check it out in the first comment. This indomitable trait means that Fireborn are often considered dangerous. Their actions can be unpredictable, as they are not afraid to destroy the old to make room for the new. With a strength that mixes creation and chaos, these individuals are often seen as a threat to institutions that seek to maintain order and stability. They represent the opposite of conformity, the constant possibility of transformation that challenges the power of any authority that tries to stop them from exploring their potential. Thus, for the Demiurge and other agents of control, humans born of fire are those who escape the mold. They cannot be reduced to mere parts in an obedience system. They embody a resistance that is ultimately uncontrollable. They are those who, instead of accepting the imposed destiny, prefer to create their own path, even if it means going against everything they have been taught. The Neogenian doctrine, found in fragments of forbidden texts and esoteric records, proposes a radically different view of humanity. She maintains that human beings are not equal in essence, but form a kind of spiritual triad, where each type carries a unique and intrinsic potential. These types, beings of light, earthly humans, and those born of fire, are not mere divisions of personality or character, but reflect deep, innate qualities that guide each of us in distinct directions. For the doctrine, recognizing these differences would be the first step towards a truer understanding of humanity itself and the forces that motivate us. This knowledge, however, was meticulously suppressed over the centuries. Since the first civilizations, power institutions realized that to maintain a controlled society, it was essential that people believed in a homogeneous structure, where everyone is equal with the same limitations and purposes. Thus, the Neogenian doctrine, with its concept of differentiated origins and specific potentials, became an evident threat. If each human type has a distinct essence, it would be logical for society to function around these differences, valuing freedom and individuality rather than conformity. The repression of the Neogenian doctrine was not limited to hiding parchments or banning manuscripts. Instead, it was an active effort by religious and political institutions to eliminate any trace of this idea from the cultural and spiritual foundations of humanity. Official narratives were consolidated, while alternative views on creation and human nature were dismissed as heresy or mythology. This was no accident. It was a conscious decision to maintain uniformity. The real reason to suppress this doctrine is that it does not align with the control interests that need all individuals to be predictable, obedient, and most importantly, conforming. Imagine the impact this doctrine would have if it were widely known and accepted. A society where people understand that they are different in essence would be less manipulable, more inclined to seek the truth, and less willing to blindly submit to imposed rules. The Fireborn would directly challenge systems of control. The beings of light would live outside of dogma and intermediaries, and even earthly humans, knowing their true origins, could break the cycle of blind obedience. The Neogenian doctrine suggests that humanity is richer and more complex than any single model of control can support. She challenges the idea that human beings must adapt to a universal mold, insinuating that, on the contrary, Each person carries a unique destiny. It is not difficult to understand why this vision was consigned to oblivion. A society aware of its true nature would represent the end of power structures based on uniformity and submission. Within esoteric doctrines and Gnostic texts, the demiurge is presented not as a benevolent creator, but as a limiting figure, whose main intention is to imprison humanity in material reality. Described as an architect of the physical world, the demiurge shapes human existence in ways that keep people anchored to a restricted perception, where spiritual and transcendental possibilities are practically inaccessible. Instead of offering freedom or knowledge, it surrounds humans with limitations that tie them to the material plane, making them dependent on basic needs, fears, and desires that keep them from their true potential. Don't miss this chance to understand what has been hidden about our true essence. The forbidden name of Jesus is almost out of print and may bring the answers you are looking for. To guarantee the effectiveness of this imprisonment, the demiurge does not act alone. It employs entities and archetypes that operate as control agents in the physical and spiritual world, each with a specific function to restrict the development of humanity. These archetypes are like patterns of behavior and thinking that influence people to follow predictable patterns, making them more susceptible to accepting reality as it is presented. By forging the collective mentality, these archetypes perpetuate values that reinforce conformity and inhibit any attempt to question or transcend what has been established. Control archetypes include widely accepted concepts such as obedience to authority, the need for social approval, and the incessant pursuit of material goods. These ideas, despite seeming natural or even desirable, function as invisible prisons that keep humanity focused on superficial and immediate aspects of existence. By idealizing competition, hierarchy, and fear of difference, these archetypes cause people to distance themselves from their spiritual essence, accepting the material world as the only possible reality. Furthermore, the demiurge uses the so-called archontic entities, or archons, as guardians of this metaphysical prison. These entities are described in Gnostic texts as invisible forces whose function is to ensure that humanity remains ignorant of its true spiritual potential and origin. Archons feed on human ignorance and confusion, creating distractions and conflicts that prevent people from seeking deeper answers. It is as if the entire system is designed to keep humanity busy, lost in distractions, while the true nature and power of every human being is neglected. The demiurge, with the help of the archons and control archetypes, establishes a carefully planned structure to keep humanity in what would be a kind of existential prison. This system, which acts at both the individual and collective level, encourages an existence of conformity and obedience, where true gnosis, the essential knowledge about one's own being, remains hidden. This prison is maintained not by visible chains, but by mental and emotional barriers that over the centuries have consolidated themselves as normality for those who inhabit the material world. Deep in esoteric literature and ancient texts, there are constant references to the three types of humans, light, earth, and fire, as representations of different spiritual lineages, each with their own qualities and purposes. This division appears in several mystical traditions around the world as a universal standard of understanding for humanity. In ancient Persian traditions, for example, there are reports of souls of fire, described as beings with an indomitable energy that drives them to challenge the established. These Persian texts see them not as destroyers, but as bearers of a transformative force, necessary to balance the forces of the world. In Hindu scriptures, we find a similar concept in the gunas, which represent different qualities that guide human beings. Sattva, linked to light and wisdom, rajas associated with passion and fire, and tamas related to inertia and matter. Although the Hindu concept is structured differently, it echoes the idea that humanity carries different essences, each guided by a unique impulse. This vision allows people to understand themselves in depth, guiding them to embrace their natural characteristics rather than conforming to an external mold. Jewish tradition, especially through Kabbalah, also presents a similar view with the fragments of light present in each human being. Kabbalah teaches that humans are vessels that contain divine sparks, but each vessel carries a different essence. Some are drawn to spiritual pursuits, others to material stability, and still others to continual transformation. Each of these lineages, according to Kabbalists, plays a fundamental role in the balance of the universe, and understanding them would be essential to achieving harmony. For those who feel the call of the unknown, the forbidden name of Jesus offers insight into what has been hidden from us for generations. Enjoy this revelation while copies are still available. Historically, these ideas have not simply been accepted, but have faced great resistance. Religious and political institutions feared the power these truths could give people, promoting a deep understanding of their spiritual individuality. Thus, many texts that address these spiritual distinctions were considered heretical, persecuted, and in many cases, destroyed. The very discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi Library stands as a testament to the attempts to preserve this knowledge, which was buried and hidden by those who wanted these ideas to survive for future generations. This fight to preserve forbidden knowledge spanned the centuries, driven by mystics, alchemists, and guardians of esoteric knowledge who understood the value of these truths. By hiding these texts in caves, crypts, and hard-to-reach places, these guardians ensured that, despite attempts at destruction, the messages of light, fire, and earth would remain intact for those who dared seek. In each recovered fragment lies a piece of the puzzle of our true nature, a reminder that despite the forces of control, knowledge about human types continues to endure, awaiting those willing to rediscover it. The final revelation suggests that within every human being there is latent potential waiting to be discovered. This power does not reside in external forces, but in understanding who we truly are in essence, beings of light, earth, or fire. This self-knowledge is the key to breaking the invisible chains that bind us to a limited existence. By understanding and accepting our origins, we begin to see beyond the imposed molds, recognizing the unique capabilities that each type carries within itself. In a society where each individual lives in alignment with their true purpose, humanity would achieve a new dimension of freedom and harmony. There would be no need for conformity or submission. Instead, each would contribute their own brilliance and strength. The light beings would bring wisdom and compassion. The fireborn would drive change and innovation, while the earthly ones would offer stability and connection to the physical world. The realization of this potential transforms not only the individual, but also the collective, creating a world where the true essence of each being is valued and respected, and where knowledge of our nature is, ultimately, the key to liberation. If you enjoyed the content and want to support our work so we can continue to bring you more research and in-depth analysis, please consider making a $100 donation. This contribution directly helps the channel grow and produce even richer materials. Thank you very much for your support.